The first time Dominic Salvati spoke to me, I thought he was joking. He sat in his usual booth near the window, wearing a suit so sharp it didn't belong anywhere near the simple restaurant where I worked. He leaned back like he owned the whole city and gave me that slow, amused smile he was known for. "Get me the usual, sweetheart. And while you're at it, what stock should I invest in next?" His men laughed like he had just delivered the best punchline in Providence. He placed his whiskey on the table without letting my hand shake. My heart raced, but my voice stayed steady. "I'd liquidate your position in Mercer Pharmaceuticals immediately," I said calmly. "Their CEO is about to resign over fraud charges that haven't reached the press yet." The laughter died. The room went still. Even the forks stopped moving. Dominic's smile faded. He sat up slowly, his eyes narrowing on me like he was seeing me for the first time. It felt like being pinned beneath a spotlight. "How would a waitress know something my financial advisors don't?" he asked in a quiet voice that carried more danger than shouting ever could. I didn't look away. "The same way I know your Cayman Holdings lost 18% last quarter while your competitors gained. I pay attention." His men stiffened like they expected him to snap his fingers and have me dragged out. Instead, he raised one hand. They froze immediately. That was the moment I understood the kind of power he carried. One gesture. Total control. "Cancel my dinner plans," he told his men, without breaking eye contact with me. "It seems I need a private consultation with M's." He waited for my name. "Bennett," I said. "Audrey Bennett." The maitre d' looked like he might faint as he led us to a small table near the windows. Everyone watched us with quiet fear, wondering why the most dangerous man in Providence was giving a waitress his full attention. Dominic leaned forward, studying me like a puzzle. "Tell me how a woman with your talent is serving expensive steaks to men who don't deserve your insight." I straightened the silverware out of habit. Sometimes being invisible helps. People talk in front of servers like we aren't there. I listen. To my surprise, he laughed, not the mocking laugh from earlier. A real one. It changed his whole face, softening edges I didn't think could soften. "You've been analyzing their conversations," he said, sounding impressed. "I observe patterns," I replied. "Everyone hides something. Markets. People. You learn to see the truth behind what they say." He swirled his whiskey as he watched me carefully. "I don't believe in coincidences, Miss Bennett. I think people cross paths for a reason." I felt something in my chest shift, but I pushed it down. Getting close to a man like him was dangerous, in ways that had nothing to do with bullets. 3 weeks later, I walked into the private office building his organization used for legitimate operations. The guards nodded at me with respect they hadn't shown before. The change unsettled me. "Your recommendation saved us $12 million, Dominic said when I entered his office. He was standing at the window with the skyline behind him. "My advisors don't like that I trust you. They think you're either a genius or setting a trap." I placed my financial projections on his desk. "The Reynolds Group acquisition will extend your shipping routes safely. You won't draw federal heat." He turned toward me. His voice softened. "You continue to surprise me. Most advisors chase trends. You chase foundation." "I'm not most advisors," I said quietly. "And I'm not interested in childish trends," he replied, stepping closer. My heart pushed against my ribs. Every instinct told me to step back, but I held my ground. "You see too much for an outsider," he said. "You asked for honesty," I answered. "I'm giving it." His eyes dropped to my lips for 1 second, one dangerous second. Then he stepped back and nodded with a respect that made my breath catch. "Have dinner with me tonight," he said. "Not as my advisor, as my guest." I should have said no. I should have walked away. Instead, that night I found myself crossing a rooftop restaurant lit with candles, Dominic rising from his chair as I approached. "You look beautiful," he said quietly. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't just risking my job. I was risking my heart. The moment I sat across from Dominic that night, I felt the city fall away. Providence stretched out behind him in waves of golden lights, but all I could see was the man watching me with an intensity that made my pulse unsteady. "You seem tense," he said. Is it the restaurant or the company? Both, I admitted. Your world runs on different rules than mine. He smiled gently, not the amused smirk he showed others. Yet you walk through financial markets like someone born for it. Those systems were designed for people with wealth and power, but you move through them better than anyone I've hired. Numbers are predictable, I said. People are not. His eyes softened. And which am I to you, predictable or dangerous? I met his gaze. Everyone in Providence knows you're dangerous. What they don't know is whether that danger protects the city or threatens it. He leaned back, studying me, almost surprised. My family ruled through intimidation because they believed it kept the city stable. Protection and threat often look the same from different angles. The difference matters, I said. Empires built only on fear collapse. Ones built on benefit endure. Something in him shifted. Respect, curiosity, maybe something more. Dinner flowed into long conversation. Then another glass of wine. Then a walk onto the terrace. He told me stories about growing up under the weight of a legacy he never chose. I told him pieces of my past I had never shared with anyone. My grandfather taught me to fight before I could read, he said quietly. He believed power was the only language anyone listened to. But you invested in education, I pointed out. You rose on more than brute strength. His eyes searched mine. You've studied me. I hesitated. Understanding financial structures means understanding the people who build them. And yet, he said, stepping closer, I can't tell if you're trying to help me or save me. I didn't have an answer. Weeks passed. Our meetings grew longer, less business, more stolen conversations, more moments where the space between us felt fragile and electric. But things changed the morning a black sedan came flying toward me as I left my apartment. I didn't even have time to scream. One of Dominic's men tackled me to the pavement just before the car sped past. Tires screeched. The sedan vanished around the corner. I lay stunned, shaking, gravel cutting into my palms. By the time they got me to Dominic's office, he was already pacing like a storm held in human form. You should have told me you assigned men to follow me, I said shakily. I shouldn't have needed to, he snapped. Then he saw my hands, scraped and bleeding, and his anger shifted into something raw. Audrey, I'm sorry. This shouldn't have touched you. His voice cracked, just a little. Someone inside your organization did this, I said. Someone scared of your transition to legitimate business. His jaw tightened. I know exactly who benefits from silencing you. That same day, federal authorities froze a portion of his accounts based on anonymous tips. It was a coordinated attack. Someone wanted to crush both his finances and his hope of change. Emergency meetings filled the night. Accusations, tension, suspicion directed at me. Paul, his right-hand man, entered the room late, eyes unreadable. Federal banking confirmed the tips came from someone who understands your entire structure, he said. His tone implied everything he didn't say. Dominic stood beside me, cold and steady. If you are suggesting Audrey Bennett is behind this, you insult my intelligence. A silence so heavy it felt like it might crush the room settled over us. When everyone finally left, Dominic turned to me with quiet regret. I've dragged you into something deadly. I shouldn't have. I lifted my chin. I chose to be here. He shook his head. Not for this. Not for war. But when I spread out the financial reports and traced the pattern of the attacks, something clicked. This isn't just sabotage, I said. It's a countdown. Someone wants the Reynolds deal dead before closing. Dominic stepped closer, studying my face. You see a way out. Quote, yes, I whispered, but you won't like it. He didn't look away. Tell me. The Reynolds deal can still go through, I said, but we need to restructure it using your Singapore holdings. They're untouched. His eyes widened, not in fear, in admiration. While everyone else sees disaster, he murmured, you see strategy. We worked until dawn, heads bent together, hands brushing more times than I care to admit. The crisis forced us close, and every moment made it harder to pretend I didn't feel something dangerous growing between us. Around sunrise, he asked quietly, "Why risk your life for this, for me?" I hesitated. Then I told him the truth. My father was an advisor who refused to launder money. Powerful men destroyed his career, and him. I swore I'd learn enough to change that world one day. Dominic stared at me, something like realization dawning in his eyes. "You came to understand us," he said slowly, "to change us from the inside. One organization at a time, I admitted. And you chose mine. I chose the one leader who might listen." Quote. He stepped closer, his voice low. "And what if I want something beyond transformation?" My breath caught. "Then we're standing on dangerous ground." "Everything with you is dangerous," he murmured, "and yet nothing has ever felt more right." We didn't kiss. Not yet. But the air between us burned with the promise of I. The night the truth clicked into place, everything changed. We were in Dominic's private office, surrounded by stacks of financial reports and backup drives. The air felt thick with exhaustion and tension, but my mind was racing too fast to rest. I opened one encrypted folder after another until a pattern finally appeared. "Dominic," I whispered, "you need to see this." He came around the desk, and the moment he looked at the screen, the quiet in the room shifted into something sharp. Over 7 years of hidden transfers. Millions diverted into offshore accounts, layered under fake consulting fees and shell companies. All linked back to one person. "Paul has been stealing from you," I said softly, "for a long time." Dominic went still, completely still, not angry, not shocked, just silent in a way that scared me more than yelling ever could. "He sabotaged our accounts," I continued. "He triggered the federal freeze. And the car this morning wasn't random. He needed me gone before I exposed this." Dominic closed his eyes, the betrayal cutting deeper than any financial wound. "He was my brother before he was my lieutenant," he said quietly. "We grew up together." I placed my hand on his arm. "I know." A moment later, his phone buzzed. When he answered, his jaw tightened. "Paul called a meeting," he said. "A private gathering with several captains. He's making his move tonight." Fear prickled up my spine. "He's staging a takeover. He thinks our finances are too weak to fight back." Dominic grabbed his coat. His voice held that cold edge again. "He thinks I'm vulnerable." Before he could leave, I stepped in front of him. "You can't walk in there with just suspicion," I said. "You need proof. Let me come with you." "No," his voice dropped, firm and protective. "I won't put you in that danger." Quote. "You already did," I said quietly, "and your men need to hear the truth from someone who uncovered it. If you walk in there alone, they'll believe this is just a power struggle. If I show them evidence, they'll understand." He stared at me for a long moment. His eyes softened with something that made my breath catch. "You are the bravest woman I've ever known," he said. "Stay behind me." The historic Salvet Social Club was packed with tension. Old portraits of former bosses stared down from paneled walls as if judging what was about to unfold. Captains stood in clusters, armed, alert, waiting to see who would claim power. Paul stood at the center like he belonged there. "Family business should be handled without outsiders," he said loudly the moment Dominic and I walked in. His gaze swept over me with poorly hidden contempt. "Your judgment is clouded. You're letting a waitress control you." Dominic didn't flinch. "My judgment is clear for the first time in years." He motioned to me. My hands were steady as I laid out the financial documents on the long wooden table. The room leaned in. Screenshots, signatures, transfers. Offshore accounts under Paul's mother's maiden name, 7 years of theft exposed in minutes. "This is fabricated," Paul snapped, panic rising. "She's manipulating." "Your signature is on every document," I said. "And the accounts tie back to a deal you made with the Cardona family to divide Dominic's territory after you removed him." A wave of anger swept through the captains. Betrayal was one thing. Alliance with rivals was a death sentence. Paul's face twisted. "You believe this outsider over blood?" Dominic stepped forward, the room falling silent around him. "I believe the truth. You betrayed this family long before she walked into our lives." Paul's eyes darted. His hand moved toward his jacket, but Dominic's men were faster. In seconds, Paul was disarmed and pinned to the floor. The room watched with cold acceptance. This was tradition. Betrayal meant death. "Take him to the warehouse," Dominic said, voice low and deadly. It was the order every captain expected. But I touched his arm. "Dominic," I whispered, "there is another way. Turn him over to federal authorities. Use legal justice, not blood. This is your chance to show the family what new leadership looks like." The room held its breath. Old rules said he should spill blood. New rules, his rules, could build something stronger. He looked at me for several long seconds, conflict tearing through his expression. Then he made his choice. "Prepare the evidence for the feds," he announced. Shock rippled through the room. "The Salvat family is done with vengeance," he continued. "We build our future on legitimacy, not violence." The oldest captain stepped forward, eyes watery with cautious pride. "Your grandfather ruled with fear," he said, "but maybe it is time to see what ruling with respect can do." For the first time, Dominic stood not as a crime boss, but as a leader worth following. 6 months passed, and the transformation was undeniable. The organization shifted from shadows to legitimate empire. Revenues rose, federal heat cooled. The Reynolds acquisition proved brilliant, and the city, once afraid of the Salvati name, began to trust it. One evening, Dominic invited me to the newly renovated Salvat Club, now a respectable business venue. After the gala ended, he led me to the rooftop terrace where we had shared our first dinner. Lights from the harbor glowed below. The city looked different, safer, brighter. Because of him. Because of us. "I asked you here," he said quietly, "because everything you see is here because of you." My breath caught when he reached into his pocket. "Audrey Bennett," he said, opening a small velvet box. "You walked into my life and changed an empire. But more than that, you changed me. Will you stay with me? As my partner, as my wife." The world went still. My heart, for the first time in years, felt steady. "Yes," I whispered. And in that moment, the dangerous, feared man of Providence pulled me into his arms as I said yes to a future neither of us ever expected. When Dominic slipped the emerald ring onto my finger, the night around us seemed to hold its breath. I felt its weight, not just as jewelry, but as a symbol of everything we had survived. The rooftop terrace glowed with soft light, but all I saw was the man standing in front of me, no longer the feared king of Providence, but the man who chose a new path because he believed in something better, because he believed in us. He drew me close, his hands warm around my waist. "I never thought I'd deserve a woman like you," he whispered, "but I promise you this. I will spend every day proving that I do." My eyes stung. "You don't have to prove anything. You already did." We stayed like that for a long moment, the city below us humming like a steady heartbeat. The future felt clear in a way it never had before. But peace doesn't come without tests. 3 weeks after our engagement, Dominic gathered his captains at headquarters to finalize the new organizational structure. For the first time in Salvati history, every business unit would operate with full transparency and legal oversight. There were no hidden ledgers, no shadow accounts, no off-the-books deals. Every captain signed agreements that would bind the family to legitimate paths. When Dominic finished speaking, the room fell silent. The oldest captain stood, leaning on his cane. "Your grandfather ruled this city with iron. Your father ruled it with fire. You rule it with something else." He nodded toward me with a small smile. "Wisdom." Dominic looked at me then, and pride softened his features. After the meeting, as everyone filtered out, Dominic closed the door behind us. "I want you to know something," he said, taking my hands gently. "All of this, the new structure, the new vision, it only works because you're part of it. I didn't change your world, Dominic," I told him softly. "You changed it yourself. I just showed you what was possible." He kissed my forehead, and for the first time I felt the full safety of his love. Not the dangerous spark from the beginning, something deeper, something steady, something real. The city changed with him. Providence Harbor transformed from a place whispered about in fear to a thriving center of commerce. Legitimate jobs filled the docks. Families walked the streets at night without glancing over their shoulders. Newspapers wrote about the Salvati Renaissance. But with change comes resistance. One evening, as we reviewed documents for the harbor development project, Dominic received a call. His expression tightened. "What is it?" I asked. "The Cardona family," he said. "They want to meet." A cold chill ran up my spine. The Cardonas had funded Paul's betrayal. They had wanted Dominic gone. They were everything the old Salvat world had once been. "Are you going?" I whispered. "Yes," he said. "Because if we're truly stepping into legitimacy, then peace must be made the right way. And if they don't want peace?" He looked at me with steady certainty. "Then they'll learn that change doesn't mean weakness." The meeting took place at a neutral location, a luxury hotel conference room with mirrored walls and thick carpet that muffled every step. I stayed behind with Dominic's newly appointed legal advisor, but my heart pounded with every passing minute. When Dominic walked back in an hour later, I rushed to him. His tie was loosened, his jaw tight. "What happened?" I asked. "It's done," he said. "They agreed to partnerships, legitimate ones, but they wanted assurance of stability." "What did you tell them?" Quote, "That Audrey Bennett stands with me." His voice softened. "That you built the foundation of everything they see." My breath caught, not because of fear, but because of the trust he placed in me so openly. Months later, Providence celebrated the grand opening of the Salvati waterfront district. A place once ruled by smuggling, now filled with restaurants, parks, families, and music. The mayor cut the ribbon while Dominic stood beside me, no longer a shadowed figure but a respected leader. As cameras flashed, someone from the press asked, "Mr. Salvati, what pushed you to make these changes?" Quote, "Dominic looked at me. One woman," he answered. "She reminded me that power means nothing if it doesn't build something lasting." My heart squeezed so tightly I could barely breathe. That night, he took me back to the rooftop terrace where everything began. The city sparkled like a sea of stars. He wrapped his arm around my waist, pulling me close. "Are you happy?" he asked. I leaned into him, feeling the beat of his heart steady against mine, more than I ever imagined. He kissed me gently, a kiss filled with gratitude and promise. "Then let's build something good together, a life, a family, a future." "I want that too," I whispered. The man who once ruled the city through fear now stood beside me as a partner who chose strength, compassion, and love. And even though danger had shaped his world, it no longer defined his future. We did. As I looked out over the transformed harbor, I realized something simple and beautiful. Sometimes the person who enters your life as a joke, a question, a passing moment, becomes the person who changes everything.